Hi Stevie, welcome to Art Nation.
Thank you.
It's very good to meet you, and of course welcome back to Australia as well. You're touring with Dave Stewart, of course, who's formerly from Eurythmics and a bit of a legend in his own right, and you also collaborated with him on your latest album. What actually brought you guys together?
I called him and asked him if he wanted to produce this record, and that was January 2010. And he came up to my house and said yes, and we decided to make it at my house because I had a big house that I don't really live in all the time. And so we just turned the whole house into a recording studio, and it was a blast. It was the best time I've ever had, the best year of my life. I am not asking forever from
You actually wrote songs with somebody else as well. What was that like to do that for the first time?
It was easy and fantastic. The songwriting process for me, I've always kind of kept to myself. I really was very selfish about it. I never really wanted to write with anyone. And Dave, differently, right when I first called him in January, I sent him a book of poetry of about 40 pages of poetry. And then I'm thinking later, what did I think? I was just going to send him this book of poetry and he was going to read it, and then we were never going to, then what did I think he was going to do? Just make some musical tracks and bring them over and leave? Because he said to me, well, you sent me the poetry, so I like this poem. And just in a situation like you and I are right now, he says, I like this poem, let's start here. And I'm like, to myself, I'm like, he doesn't really think that we're gonna actually write a song here in this room, in the same room together. And he just starts playing guitar, and we have microphones like this. And in 5 minutes, we had written the second to the last song on the record that's called You May Be the One. And this was a serious, heavy-duty song. This was not just a fun little dumb song. It's a serious song. You may be the one, but you'll never be the one.
Tell me a bit about your trademark vocal style, a beautiful voice, of course. How have you maintained your voice?
I have an amazing vocal coach whose name is Steve Real, and I've been working with him since 1998, and he comes on the road, and we do 30 minutes, 3.5 hours before I go on, so it's very much of a commitment, but it saves your voice. And I can probably go on singing and pretty much sounding just like I sound now for another 15 years.
Did you look after your voice when you were first starting to perform?
No.
No, not at all?
Absolutely not.
Just let it rip.
Just let it rip and scream away, and had, and we weren't wearing ear monitors then. We were, we had 2 big, huge speakers in front of us that we were just blasting back in our face, And we just screamed ourselves through our songs. And it's lucky that we all didn't get like nodules and have to have surgery, but luckily we didn't. We managed to get through. But I go back and I listen to some live performances of Fleetwood Mac in the 70s, and I'm like, oh my God, I wish somebody had told me to get a vocal coach, because all you really have to do is do a couple of lessons with them, and they'll make you a tape. And then if you never want to see them again, you don't have to. You just do your tape every day, 3 hours before you go on. And then you have no problems. You're able to go on stage and just be fantastic because you're not worrying about your voice.
Talking about people that have wonderful voices, and you've talked a lot in the past about how wonderful these singers have been to you. 70s, Janis Joplin, Joni Mitchell. What sort of influence did they have on you?
My songwriting influences were more Jackson Browne, Crosby, Stills and Nash, Joni Mitchell, and because of what I learned from them, their phrasing, the way they wrote poetry, the way they put their poetry to music. I say studied, and I guess that really is what I did. I studied, but I laid on the floor and listened and read their music and read their words, and just loved it. I never looked at it as studying. I just looked at it as these are my very favorite writers and my very favorite phrasers, because learning to phrase when you're a poet is hard. And Joni taught me that you can fit thousands of words in every sentence if you sing it right. So that was great to know, because when you're a poet, you don't really want to shorten up your sentences. So she taught me that.
With so many songs that are incredibly memorable as well, some of them, of course, have been written through times of great stress and some kind of vulnerability as well. I was wondering what you think the role of vulnerability plays in songwriting.
I think you have to be very honest. And from the very beginning, I think I even said this to my mom, I'm never going to be dishonest in my songs. If he broke up with me, I'm not going to write the song and say I broke up with him. I'm never going to not tell the truth. So you're much better off to actually share what really happened with your audience and not try to make up a story. As if you have a good story, there's no reason to try to change the story. And I'm very superstitious. Once I've written a line, it's like every once in a while Lindsay will say, you know, well, you're writing in the third person, and then all of a sudden you flip back into first person, and you can't really do that. And I'm like, so would you say that to Bob Dylan? I snap back at him, you know, and that's why Lindsay and I don't write songs together. And he'll say, well, no, I guess I would. And so that ends that conversation right there.
Actually, back in 1991, I read an interview where you said when you perform some of these songs on stage that tell such a they tell such a story that you used to get emotional on stage and sometimes even break into tears through songs. Does that happen anymore, or has it shifted in some ways for you?
No, it does happen. I mean, I'm in a little better control now, where I don't just start sobbing. But my eyes fill up with tears. Lots of times that happens. Something will just strike me, you know, as I'm going through, and I'll think of something, you know.
Once in a minute, your life knows no answer.
You've talked, of course, at length about addiction. I'm kind of curious about how that can, in some ways, affect or even benefit songwriting.
Well, as a person who came through a high drug culture, I would never, you know, tell people you must have an addiction to be able to create, because I created this record over this last year, not addicted to anything. So I could have told myself all those years, well, you have to be high to write a song. It's not true. You don't. You have to be inspired to write a song.
Can we talk briefly about Rumours, because I was watching a documentary about that recently, and it was almost the, you know, it's a lauded album, of course, but it was almost the album that wasn't, in some ways. There was, you know, lots of difficulties going on between the members of Fleetwood Mac. How do you reflect on that time today?
Well, I reflect on it by remembering the beginning of it, which was fantastic, because we kind of moved up to San Francisco, to Sausalito, which is it's kind of very Sydney-esque. It's a very fantastic place. And you look back at the city of San Francisco, and there's a very famous recording studio called the Record Plant up there. So and they had like the Record Plant house where everybody was supposed to live, and Christine and I lasted 2 days in the Record Plant house, and then moved to 2 little apartments down the street. So we spent 3 months there, and we recorded our 12 songs. And even though when we left, we went back to LA and spent another, you know, close to a year just overdubbing, it all really came back to pretty much what we did at Sausalito. And we would go every day and go sit outside and look at the ocean and have cappuccinos and Irish coffees and talk, and then we'd go to the studio at about 3 in the afternoon, and we'd work until 2 or 3 in the morning. I wrote Dreams in Sly Stone's studio, at the back of that studio, one day when I didn't have anything to do, and I just took one of Christine's Fender Rhodes and went back, and the owner of the studio said, I have a studio that you can go into if you want. And I'm like, I thought I'd seen everything there. I'd been there for 2 months. And he said, it's Sly Stone's studio, so you want to go in there? And I'm like, sure. And so I went in there with my piano, and I wrote Dreams. And the next day, I played the cassette of it for the band, and we recorded it the next day. We did not take our arguments into the studio. We really were very, very focused. And if we argued, it was outside the studio. And so we took all that bad energy and that angry energy that we had, and we really focused it on the music. And when we were in the studio, even if we were angry at each other, we were also very aware that this anger was really good for the songwriting process. And that we really had a lot to say, because we were all in the midst of, you know, Mick and his wife were breaking up, and Lindsay and I were breaking up, and John and Christine were breaking up. Everybody was breaking up. Everybody that we knew was breaking up. So it was like we had all this, you know, amazing stuff to write about. And we were aware that we were being able to create this amazing record. And, you know, we weren't stupid. We would sit there and we'd play back, you know, one of the songs, and we'd go like, I'd want to be in that band if I heard that on the radio. So it was like we were very aware how good it was. And we were very aware that it was a moment in time. So we didn't mess with it. We really didn't. We were very, very careful. If I ever write a book, it won't be a nasty old tell-all, because first of all, my life wasn't that. My life was really pretty great. And so what I would do is I would just write vignettes, you know, and that's what I would do. I would just tell little fantastic moments in my life, which have been many, many, many. And that would be my book. It would be like little chapters of a play. I wouldn't drag you through the bad
whole
times.
thing. Tell me about the Night of 1,000 Stevies.
Well,
Talking about fans.
I don't know a lot about it because I've never been, but I do know.
Have you really never been?
I've really never been. Oh no, if I had been, you'd know, and they'd know. But I send video clips and stuff to them because, of course, when it started 20 years ago, who knew that it would still be a raging party today? I think it's amazing because what is my favorite day? Halloween. My favorite thing in the world, getting dressed up in fantastic costumes and going to a party. So, and that's what they do. You know, if I ever do decide to come to your party, you'll never know until I go up on stage to karaoke while I sing Edge of 17 and whip off my mask. And there I'll be singing that song, and it'll take you a minute to go, is that really her?
But do you enjoy the impact that you've had on younger artists, not only on Glee, but say, you know, Destiny's Child, or the fact that we all are watching your clips, that sharing of your music across, you know, across the internet and on younger artists? What do you think about that kind of impact that you've had?
Well, I think that that's fantastic. I mean, that's all I ever wanted to do, you know, was really affect people with my music and with my songs. I wanted to be, you know, I wanted to be a great writer, and I wanted my writing to go far and wide. And I think that, you know, if it all came to an end, I would feel very good about it right now, because I feel that I have affected a lot of people, and I feel that people do love my songs, and that makes me feel really good. That makes me feel all that love, and makes me feel like all those nights I sat up all night long at the piano.
I had my whole life, and I am stronger than you know.
I feel that it was all really worth it, you know, and it seemingly has gotten out to all generations.
Stevie Nicks, it's wonderful to meet you. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much. You too.